It is the very best day to just show up. Hi, everyone. Yvonne Heath here, nurse turned author, speaker, and changemaker, and your host. Welcome to Navigating Grief with Heart and Humor, where we talk about plan and prepare for grief, transitions, end of life, all the messiness in between, long before it arrives, and diffuse the fear so we can live fully now. We define these terms. What is grief? What are transitions? What is mourning? What is bereavement? We are continuously learning, unlearning, and evolving. Most of the time, we have been in the deep trenches of grief and realized how ill prepared we were. We did not have coping skills and strategies. And now we want to do things differently. We want to be proactive, normalize hard conversations, and teach by example. The best time to start was right from the beginning. When we were children, wouldn't it have been wonderful to normalize these conversations throughout life? We can't teach what we don't know. Our parents couldn't teach what they didn't know. And so the next best time to start is now. And it starts with you and it starts with me. So let's get started. As always, I want to share a fun fact because I always aspire to share my message with heart, humor, and humanness because it's already serious enough and I'm really funny. So in the last episode, I shared my fun fact was that our neighbors got some chickens. They were getting chickens and we went to meet the chickens and I was super, super excited and wondering what it would be like. And well, there were 6 chickens. They all kind of look the same and we don't even hear them. They barely even make noise. But the truth is that they have a wonderful little home and they are going to provide us with farm fresh or eggs right next door. And I know that these chickens are well cared for and they have lots of room to roam. And that is also very important to me because I believe that anytime we know that we are causing harm for our own good, whether it's whatever it may be, we're eating food and we don't know where the food came from and animals are mistreated or whatever it may be. I feel like these are the things that chip away at our soul, even if we don't want to think about it. So whenever I can, wherever I can, and I try to be more and more aware. I want to know if animals are treated well. I am a vegetarian. I'm not vegan, but I'm a vegetarian. So I will eat a food that comes from animals, but I want to know if I'm going to eat eggs, I want to know that these chickens are well cared for. And so it is wonderful to know. And also the fun fact is they were naming the chickens and they all look exactly the same, but they called one Picasso because he actually brushed up against, or she brushed up against some paint and now she has paint on her. So she's Picasso and they know she is. So they could try to, name the chickens. I'm not sure how they are, you're going to distinguish unless others, have something that happens. So anyways, it is fun to know that there's chickens next door and they have dogs. I was wondering what they would think, and I didn't want them to harm the chickens, and I think they're kind of afraid of them. So that's a good thing. Okay, so let's begin with our wonderful topic today, and we will be talking about nature. And I just want to, as always, start with just grounding myself and being very present for our conversation. I believe it's very important to create rituals. And, there's a lot of busyness, a lot of noise. And when we want to be fully present somewhere, we have to be intentional. And so I am intentional about pausing, forgetting about anything else that might be a distraction. And when a distraction happens, because, everyone's brain spins, mine does a lot. I just let it go and say, no, I'm fully present here right now. I'll think about that later. And to really sort of center myself and ground, I love to close my eyes, take 2 slow, deep breaths with the intention that I want to share a message that you need to hear today, knowing that I will also be learning. And so I invite you to have a ritual or join me. I'm just going to close my eyes and take 2 slow, deep breaths with the intention of creating this moment, this time with us, and our time together to be meaningful for you and for me. And when I exhale, I let go of everything that doesn't serve me, and I want to be grounded. So join me if you'd like. I'm going to take a slow, deep breath, inhaling and exhaling through my mouth. One more time, inhaling through my nose and exhaling through my mouth. Those pauses during the day, whenever you need one, whenever you feel frazzled or you want to be really present, are so valuable. So let's get started with today's topic. And I just love, I love always being open to learning, unlearning, evolving, and reframing. And I've shared before, I have the privilege of being a part of the advisory council for the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation. And Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was a foundation, a pioneer in conversations in grief, death, dying, and reframing how we treated when she was a doctor and in the hospital system. And when people were dying, they were just disregarded for the most part. And she had sat with patients and had conversations, and other doctors did not appreciate that at all. In fact, they treated her very poorly, and she continued. And it's funny because in her first book on death and dying in the 60s, I mean, she was just way before her time, like before the world, when it first, like, we are not having these conversations. You think we're death phobic now? Whew, back then they did not want to hear this. But she talked about these 5 stages of grief that she witnessed in these dying, in those who were dying, and the world went crazy and said, oh my goodness, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross says when you're grieving there's these 5 stages, and that's not what she meant at all. And this was just to give this in this context. She wanted to give it a framework so that people understood what she was witnessing. And she went on to write 24 other books, and didn't even talk about the stages again. And yet that's what she's most known for. So I'm grateful to be on the board. I'm learning more and more about Elizabeth's work, and they are doing, her son Ken is the president of the foundation, and they are doing beautiful work around the globe in this death positive movement, death care movement, normalizing these conversations. And they create these education series every spring and fall. There's 8 weeks, and they have 8 different speakers sharing their wisdom. And I will tell you, I am just in awe of joining this global movement. Everyone who just shows up, see what I did there, just shows up, and shares their incredible perspective, their reframing, their work in the world, because it's a vast topic. When you talk about grief, death, dying, there's so many aspects to it, and there's always something to learn. And so there are speakers from all over the world, literally Australia, India, Africa, England, you name it. And I have the privilege, as we speak in this education series, I am co-hosting with the incredible Wilka Roy, who is from Mexico, and she is helping to create extraordinary death care, better death care in her country and beyond, in South America and the world. And so in this series, we are talking about the nature of grief, our nature, and nature as we think of it out there. And I am just in awe of the wisdom that people share. And I just wanted to, as we're thinking of, as I've often thought, nature's over there, and we need to connect our own nature, and we need to get outside, and it's sort of a yes and. So there have been two speakers so far. I just wanted to share a little glimpse of the wisdom that they have shared, and then my own learning. And I'm going to continue to share this because I'm just always amazed and grateful that I understand that we never stop learning. And if I have been sharing a message or something, and then I hear something and I say, oh, I'm going to reframe how I'm sharing this, because now I see it from this new perspective. And that's what happened to me this week. And I will never, it's funny because I think sometimes people are, nervous or feel embarrassed or ashamed that they've shared something and maybe it's not exactly what they now believe. But I mean, we only share what we know at the time. and so, we can't know what we don't know. And so it's always okay when we have new information to say, oh, yeah, I was used to talk about this like this, and now I see this in a little different way, and that's okay. Even in my book, Love Your Life to Death, I shared, Elizabeth, a little blurb on the 5 stages of grief. And I kind of alluded to the fact that, you can feel anything else. It's not everybody feels each of these, denial, bargaining, and depression, etc., anger. Not everyone feels this. And sort of, I was kind of tiptoeing around it. Well, if I was writing that today, I would have so much more information and I would share it in a very different way. But that's what I knew then. It was just a different time. So in this series, the first speaker was Richard Skrein. And if I'm saying that last name wrong, I apologize, but it's Skrein. Not sure how to pronounce it. And I wanted to pronounce that for you because I want you to go to his website, richardskrein.com. This beautiful soul spends most of his time in the wilderness, and he is part of, they have the garden classroom, and I'm just looking at forest teaching. They teach children. I have to put my glasses on, speaking of nature, the forest school, that's it. The forest school, and they are expanding learning and bringing children out into the forest, into like the natural world to learn. And we spent like 15 minutes and he was sharing this story, and it was online, and we can't always get out into the natural state of nature, but even that, connecting by Zoom with this fireplace that was, making, or this fire. It was a like a fire you would make out in the forest, and it was crinkling and making noise, and you just closed your eyes and you felt like you were by the fire. And he was telling a camp story. And what he shared that really spoke to me was when they go out into the forest and they have this, whatever agenda for learning, whatever they see out in nature, there's so much to learn. Nature out in nature is a beautiful, beautiful teacher. There's so much wisdom out there, continuous cycles of life and death. And he was talking about this big, huge, beautiful tree that was over 300 years old, and a storm knocked it down. And there's just tremendous grief in this beautiful tree that everyone just used to see and say, oh, it's the most incredible tree. And he shares how, yes, it's absolutely, when the tree dies, it's sad. And then this tree, of course, becomes a part of the earth and the soil, and also becomes the home to so many different animals and insects, and it's that beautiful cycle. And then he talked about, they came across a rabbit that had died. And, you know, here again, my reframing, because even in my book, I said there's always teachable moments. And I thought, oh, okay, so, you know, the adults are going to gather around and ask questions and talk about this rabbit that had died and your hard feelings, and it's sad, and you hope that he had a wonderful life and that he didn't suffer when he died, etc. But what Richard said is, as soon as they saw the rabbit, they thought, okay, let's put our agenda of learning aside, because here's a moment. And instead of the wise adults gathering around and being the teachers, they all just stepped back and let these 15 children gather around this rabbit and have their own conversation without interrupting, without sharing their knowledge and wisdom. And once the kids were sort of done and had their, you know, back and forth, and they had questions and sad and whatever they did, then as they moved on, then later they all had a conversation. And I just thought that was so, wow. Yes. Because children are very wise. And, you know, if we allow the space for them to explore their discomfort around death, their questions, their beliefs, whatever, and just step back and create that space. See, that's something we're very, very, very uncomfortable with in our society. Western culture is just stepping back and being quiet and just creating that space for grief, for learning, for contemplation. And I was so grateful for that lesson. And moving forward in my life, when I have these opportunities, instead of sharing all my wonderful wisdom in the moment, I'm just going to be quiet, and I'm going to listen, and I'm going to allow this natural time to unfold. And I was so grateful for that, and so much more about what they are bringing. They are bringing children into nature and teaching others how to do the same with the garden classroom and forest schools. And I just think it's so extraordinary. And he's written some books. Let me see the name. I just love it. 50 Things to Do in the Wild, 50 Things to Do in the Snow, and 50 Things to Do with a Stick. 50 Things to Do with a Stick. And again, I love that, because we complicate things, right? When you see children and adults are the same, the consumerism, right? We need stuff, and we need gadgets, and we need all these things. And I remember being a kid, being a child, we lived in a rural, or like in a city, there was a creek in the back. I used to spend hours at that creek, and climbing trees and exploring nature. And, you know, we've lost a lot of that, and we feel that pressure of kids needing all this stuff. And we know kids don't need stuff. It's kind of like our cats, Calvin and Hobbes. You know, we could buy them a bunch of fancy toys and a plastic bag and a box and just little things around the house. Our one cat was playing with a kernel of dog food for like half an hour today. And kids are no different. Nature is a beautiful teacher and is a playground. And I am so grateful to Richard for reminding us of that, and for that beautiful wisdom around the story and the rabbit and the tree, right? That's that cycle of life, the circle of life and death. And it was beautiful. And then the next week, the speaker was Madison Ledgerwood. Oh my goodness. What a beautiful soul. She is the executive director of Remembering Earth. And I also invite you to have a look at this website. Madison shared a very heart-wrenching story of her childhood and tremendous grief that she endured, and of course, as a child, didn't really understand how to navigate. And she really chose to see the value in how it reframed her life, and she found solace in nature and reconnecting with her own nature and spending time in nature. And when I say spending time in nature, she also, my aha moment with her, with her beautiful wisdom and teaching, is that, again, we still see ourselves as separate, right? Because I've said it, and when I share my 7 takeaways, and my takeaway number 6 is find your post. That's something that you can hold on to in times of despair, that can be there for you no matter what, something that is not temporary, something that is greater than you. And for me, I say my post is nature. So when I'm joyful, I go out in nature, and when I'm grieving, I go out in nature. And it's a yes, and because what Madison reminded me is that we are nature, right? Like we say, oh, we're connected to one another. And it's, yes, we are connected to one another, and we are connected to this earth. We all are from this earth. As far as I know, I mean, we didn't come from somewhere else. I mean, we are all born of this earth, from this earth. And even when I look around and you see walls and paint and pictures and everything came from the earth. It wasn't transported here from a different planet, or, don't think anyway. No, but everything has energy. Everything has an energy, and everything is from earth. So it isn't, when I say go out in nature, I now remind myself, well, I am nature, that I am a part of this, my house, this room, everything is a part of this. And my reframing is, instead of thinking of it myself as separate, and when I'm in a building, I'm separate from nature, what I remind myself is I want to go out in nature, in its natural state of, it's no longer like trees and that have been changed into furniture. It's trees in the earth, and it's still in its natural form, and very alive, high energy. And like, if you ever go out in the forest or go out to a park, wherever you live, and just stop and really feel the energy in nature, the birds, the trees, all of it, just be that person that can just sit there. I mean, it is alive. And if we can feel like in our own home, although it's not in its natural state, there is still energy, and we are energy, and we are a part of nature. So we are not separate. And so some way I need to reframe my takeaway in saying, instead of going out into nature, going out into like nature in its purest form or natural form, and just reminding myself that I am nature, and so is my house. And still in my house, I can also open windows and have live plants, and even, nature in its more natural state. So it was just an interesting reframing. And the other aha moment with lovely Madison was, so many times when we are grieving, grief demands to be heard. I always say it's like a toddler having a temper tantrum. Don't tell it to go away. It needs to be heard. It needs to be felt and acknowledged. And often when we share our stories, it's so healing, and we want to be witnessed, right? Like, we want to be acknowledged. And what Madison shared was, yes, grief wants to be witnessed. And then she said, it doesn't have to be a person. You can go out in nature and talk to the trees and share. And you don't always want to go out in nature to, you want to give and receive, like give to nature, be grateful for nature, which is giving. If there's garbage, clean it, do something, do something to give. And then in receiving, you can be heard, and just, you can go out there and you can cry and you can scream and you can be sad and you can tell your story and anger and all of it, and just feel heard. And then you can just be still in nature. And it's like and trust me, I know some of this stuff sounds woo-woo. I would probably have made fun of somebody saying this to me 15 years ago, and now I love it. Go ahead and make fun of me. I don't even care, because saying it out loud in nature, I hadn't done that, and I am going to do that. I'm going to go out there when I'm grieving, when I'm struggling, and I always say I'm going to go out in the forest, and I feel all the energy, and now I'm going to say it out loud. And I'm also going to show my gratitude and do something good for nature. And it's like this beautiful, reciprocal, incredible connection, because we are a part of nature. We are nature. And so that was also a beautiful moment for me to think, wow, we don't always have to find that person, because the truth is, sometimes when I'm grieving, I don't want to talk to anybody. I know I need to mourn, right? Express, convert my grief to mourning, as my friend Maria says, and like, get it out. I'm going to go do it with the trees. And I just felt so, I don't know, it just was it's like a transcendent thing to know that I can share that with people. Go out in nature, speak it out loud, say what you need to say to get out. Because so many times I know I've heard people say, oh, I know I need to talk about this, and no one wants to listen. No one wants to listen to me. They tell me to get over it, and they tell me to move on. They tell me to be busy, or to just be busy and forget about it, especially when it's buried and carried grief, something that happened a long time ago. And people are like, I don't want to talk about that. And maybe they're grieving and dealing with it in another way. Maybe they're not. Whatever it is, they don't want to hear it. And that's very challenging when people don't have someone who will listen. And of course, I invite you to find your wonderful, compassionate community who will acknowledge and allow your grief. And at the same time, go out in nature and share what your heart needs to share. Isn't that so awesome? That's in 2 sessions, and I cannot wait to hear more, because it is that beautiful reframing of, allowing nature to teach us, of reminding ourselves that we are nature. Everything is from nature. We are all connected. And so we are never alone. We are not alone. We are connected to this big, beautiful world. We are connected to each other, and to get back to that belief and that beautiful feeling, and to know that nature is always there for you as a part of you. And I invite you to go into nature somewhere, somehow, in your backyard. Get your hands in the dirt, get your feet dirty, walk bare feet where you can, and just feel that natural world that you are a part of. And I promise it will be one of the greatest healers, a very important part of your wellness journey. So I thank you for having these conversations with me. I would love to hear how you leaned in, how you got your hands dirty, how you feel about what I heard. Do you think it's just bonkers, or do you think it's something that you might want to do? I really feel like the more we do our own work and connect to our own nature and the natural world around us, and remind ourselves that we are all connected, and we are connected to everything, that we can navigate this journey we call life with greater ease and joy and grace. So I thank you again. Always remember, never forget, plan your life, plan your death, and then just love your life to death. And always bring your own tambourine to the party, even in nature. Thanks so much. Bye for now.